Greetings once again. I am back doing part 3 of the video series Daniel chapter 11 from the book I wrote back in 2015 and edited it in 2017 and then edited it again in 2022. I got some more edits to make because I'm finding a lot of typos in this chapter. So I'm gonna I left off talking about the transitional verse going from the time of the Maccabees in their destruction of the Seleucids onto the transitional stage, which is the bringing us fast forward to the time of the end, verse 35. So I explained that at the end of the last video. I guess I should explain it again since it's important to know. So here's Daniel 11:35, and some of them understanding shall fall to try them and to purge and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. So here's my explanation. Preterists, amillennialists, and postmillennialists want to continue verse 1135 while including it with the time of Antiochus IV. They insist on including this in order to connect Antiochus IV to the Antichrist mentioned in verse 1136 through 39. The twisting of the scriptures in order to satisfy a heretical doctrine occurs when cherry-picked verses are used to explain their beliefs. Verse 1135 is a blanket statement covering the persecution which the children of God have endured. This will conclude at the time of the end, even until the time of the end. Some want to say this points to the time of the end of the Seleucid dynasty. It seems that they do not understand the phrase that follows, because it is yet for a time appointed, that the time that is yet appointed points to the last of the persecution of God's children. I do not see this is the time of the rapture of the church, but the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. This will occur after the 70th week of Daniel 9:27 has concluded, after Jesus disposes of the Antichrist, the false prophet, and the rest of the heathen. An angel will put Satan in chains for 1,000 years, and persecution will cease. That's what it means by, and some to the understanding shall fall and try them and purge them and to make them white. Those are the saints saved by the blood of Jesus, even to the time of the end, until the time appointed. So this is fast forwarding us to the time of the end. All right. So, did I explain here? Oh, yeah. Only the saints will be washed white. Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. That is Isaiah 1:18, prophesying of the new covenant. We, as saints, are washed by the blood of the Lamb. Revelation 22:14. One needs to conclude that the persecution of the saints, washed white by the blood of the Lamb, will happen until the return of Jesus Christ. It is an appointed time which is yet to be revealed, which, with that said, verse 1135 forwards us to the time right before the last days will occur, which begins in verse 1136. All right, so we're on to verse 1136. And the king, notice it says, and the king. Daniel, throughout this whole chapter 11, never calls anyone a king. He says, king of the south, prince, king of the north, but he never calls anyone just the king. All right. The king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak difficult things above the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, because that is determined shall be done. So this king is not Antiochus Epiphanes, because he would have said he. Daniel would have said he shall do according to his will. Because once he establishes king of the north, king of the south, he then uses pronouns after that. He never comes back addressing him as king of the north, king of the south again. So he's coming up with a king. This is a new king being introduced here, and it's not a king of the south or king of the north. Verse 11:6 was brought forward to the end times by the transition implied in 1135. There are many scholars, theologians, and pastors who have failed to understand the book of Daniel because it has been closed up until the last days. So they have a hard time interpreting Daniel because it wasn't to be interpreted correctly until May 14th, 1948, when the end times began. Since that day, theologians that are Christians that have the Holy Spirit, some are gifted with the ability to interpret. Those people can interpret the book of Daniel accurately. That's why I'm sitting here. And the king shall do according to his will. This is the first and only time that Daniel refers to someone in chapter 11 as a king, without it stating king of the north, king of the south. If this had been Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, Daniel should have continued to refer to him as he. Another rebuke against this being Antiochus IV is that he was not able to do according to his will. Was he? He was defeated by Rome and he was defeated by the Maccabees. So he did not do according to his will. If you remember a few verses back, I explained that he was curbed by the Romans. In review of verses 11, 29 through 30, the Romans sent a Macedonian fleet with their ambassadors Caius Papias, Caius Dosimus, and Caius Hostilius, who came in defense of Alexandria to defend Ptolemy of Egypt. Antiochus IV went back to his homeland with his tails between his legs. Antiochus was also defeated by the rebellion of the Jews led by the Maccabees. So the king is obviously not Antiochus IV Epiphanes. All right? This king, mentioned in verse 11, 36 through 39, should only be discerned to be the first beast of Revelation 13:1, as well as the little horn of Daniel 7:8, and verses 20, Daniel 7:20 through 25, and Daniel 8:9 through 13. He's the little horn of those prophecies. Verse 11, 36 through 39 provides the most detailed account of who the world leader will contend with, who will detailed account of who the world will contend with during the 70th week of Daniel 9:27. These four verses are unique to the rest of Daniel 11 because they do not seem to be in the exact timeline of when they will occur verse by verse. They give important information about this Antiochus, I'm sorry, this Antichrist and his Antichrist system that will be in place. So I'm going to give you interpretation first of 1136 through 39 from thorough study. I'm going to go to Revelation 13:5 and 6, talking about the Antichrist. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell therein. There's your modern day or end times abomination of desolation. Jesus said that it was still going to happen, as he did in the book of Matthew 20, in Matthew 24. He says, and Mark 13, he acknowledged that it was yet to happen. So you can't say that this is Antiochus fourth Epiphanes. You can't. So, because he said it was even spoken by the book of Daniel. Revelation 13:5 and 6 indicates that the same blasphemies as Daniel 11:36, and shall speak difficult things against the God of gods. Isn't that what Revelation 13, 13, 5 and 6 is saying this? The final two phrases of Daniel 11:36 can be understood to be a consummation of God's final plan for the reconciliation of his people. This is laid out in a 6-point plan mentioned in Daniel 9:24, because that is determined shall be done. You understand what I'm saying here? Because that shall be determined shall be done. He will prosper until indignation is complete. What is the indignation? God's wrath on the world. So he'll speak difficult things about God and shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished, because that is determined shall be done. The 70th week of Daniel shall be done. All right. So, did I do this already? Okay. Trying to see where I left off. Right here. Right here. All right. Because that is determined shall be done. 70 weeks are determined. Remember that. If you go to my teaching video on Daniel 9:24 says 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city to finish transgression and to make an evil of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring the everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision of prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Determined right here. Okay? Because that is determined shall be done. The Antichrist or beast will be allowed to prosper until the consummation is accomplished. He will be given 42 months or 3.5 years and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. All right? Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abomination he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined, there's that word again, shall be poured out on the desolate. So Daniel 9:27 confirms Daniel 11:36, doesn't it? And yet your preterists and amillennialists and postmillennialists will grasp onto this, saying that, and and still implying that it's Antiochus Fourth Epiphanes. That's their agenda. It's an agenda only. It's a false belief. It's an agenda. It's a religion. It's not Christianity. Daniel 11:30. I guess I can call it a cult because they do believe Christ is their savior. So they may be Christians, but they are a Christian cult. They don't believe in the millennial kingdom. They don't believe in the rapture. The things directly spoken by the Lord, they don't believe because it doesn't fit their agenda. Daniel 11:37 brings into the mix of prophecy, which many will argue over, while others just don't care. The statement, "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers," right? And that's in Daniel 11:37. Where did I put that? Did I even bring it up here? Huh. It's right there below. Silly me. All right. There's a prophecy in Genesis 49 spoken by Jacob on his deathbed as he told each son what would befall of them in the last days. Dan was given by Jacob on his deathbed. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, and adder in the path that bites the horse heels, so that the rider shall fall backward. Many associate this prophecy to Dan, which has been concluded to connect Antichrist with the bloodline that will bring forth the Antichrist. There are many theories that have been proposed, as some suspect, that some of the tribe of Dan may have fled captivity, the Assyrians in 722 BC, and migrated over to Greece. That is entirely possible, especially with what Daniel says here in this verse 37 of Daniel 11. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. So who is the God of his fathers? God, capital God, God of his fathers. Well, if he is the Antichrist, or I mean, if he's the Antichrist and he's not a Jewish Antichrist, or who is the Jewish God? Or excuse me, who is the pagan God? Who is the Antichrist God but Satan? Well, the God of his fathers. Well, the pagans, their father, they have many idols that they worship and many gods, right? The God is monotheistic. It's not polytheistic. So if he's regarding the God of not regarding the God of his fathers, that would be not regarding Yahweh, right? Of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's not regarding him. So that's why people take the um, Genesis 49:17 prophecy and realize that this is what this could be. That the bloodline of Dan may have migrated over to Rome, actually, to Greece and then Rome. Okay, so we're back here. Let's see. The possibility of Antichrist being a homosexual is entirely likely and probably will be preferred by Satan. It has always been an abomination to God, nor the desire of women. So this king that's coming shall not regard the God of his heart, shall not regard Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, nor the desire of women. So he's a homosexual, pretty much. And if you follow the end times here right now, the agenda on the far left, the agenda of the Antichrist, of the atheist agenda, or the satanic realm, is to bring the abominations to God in full blast. And so the um, homosexuality is becoming revered now. And so it's setting up for the Antichrist to be homosexual and accepted. When the abomination of destination occurs at the midpoint of the 7th week of Daniel, the Antichrist will abolish all religions. The mystery religion, known as Roman Catholicism, will be prolonged until Rome is destroyed. Romans 18. All of Satan, or Revelation 18, sorry. All of Satan's false religions, Mormonism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Jehovah's Witness, etc., will be rebuked by Antichrist. He will not share his glory or worship for him with any other false gods. All attention will be for him only, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. Now, this is because on day 1261 of the 7 years, Lucifer will be cast out of heaven, and he will come down to heaven and inhabit the Antichrist. That's how he's given power for 42 months. And he will not regard any god. He says, from now on, there's no other religion but worshiping me. That's what Satan's going to do. So, Daniel 11:38. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and precious things. All right. So, who is the God of forces? Revelation 17:10-11 points to the prophecy beast that goes into perdition. One should understand that the Pope of Rome, during the time this prophecy takes place, will be the false prophet, the second beast. The false prophet, second beast, will call for the worship of the first beast, Antichrist. The papacy has initiated worship of departed saints and their images, who they make their protectors, defenders, and guardians. And notice it kind of fits in here. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces. The papacy has also twisted the Lord's Supper into the holy sacrament with the host, the wafer, and the bread as God. This bread and blood is made into a God by the words of a mumbling priest. The apostles never had known these gods, whom the Roman Catholic popes claim to be in succession of a God whom his fathers knew not and he honor. So the Antichrist will cast down the truth, just like Daniel 8 imposes, the little horn does. So, thus shall he do the most strong with most stronghold. I'm going to say this: God of forces, he shall honor the God of forces. That's Satan. That's Lucifer. So the Antichrist, this king, shall honor Lucifer, the God of forces. This actually should be a small g, I think. Why glorify him? Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with the strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. So verse 1139 points to the papacy, who shall have their temples, churches, and chapels throughout the world. They will be performing the transubstantiation of the bread and the wine while they claim it to be God and worship it as God. They will rule over the world while they insist on people to worship and give their money to the Roman Catholic churches for the Vatican's own financial gain. One can already see this happening today. It would seem that verses 11, 38 through 39 provide a preview to the last days before the 70th week of Daniel. We can already see these events culminating to a final one world religion, which the Vatican will be in control of. This will be the religion that will be in place, excuse me, until the day of the abomination of desolation. The Antichrist will no longer allow worship of any other God but him, as one reads in Revelation 17 and 18. The Antichrist will dispose of the mystery religion when he has accomplished his goal, and that is Mystery Babylon the great harlot. That's Roman Catholicism. Okay, now we're getting into verse 1140, a very controversial verse. Many theologians argue over this or disagree, with me at least, about the interpretation. So we're going to break it down. And first, we're going to read it. At the time of the end times. So the king of the south push at him. We were introduced to the king of Egypt again at the time of the end. King of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, with horsemen, with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. All right, so let's break this down. And at the time of the end, clearly the time period being referred to here is the time of the end of the current age or dispensation, 2,000-year dispensation. Once again, we must realize that the prophecies of Daniel in Daniel 11 are working on a timeline. Getting back here in the timeline, 36 through 39 was kind of giving you a kind of almost like an update of the Antichrist kingdom coming. So it was a preview, so to speak, of the Antichrist and what he's going to do. So now we're at the time of the end, and let's just look at this first, and then I'll show you how it works, how it fits in. With verses 11:36 through 9 referring to Antichrist in the 70th week of Daniel, then one must conclude that the time of the end is during that time as well. The exact timing of this battle between the king of the north and king of the south cannot be determined based on information that has been given as of yet. Once certain prophecy is fulfilled in this, once certain prophecy is fulfilled in these times, the timing may start to become clearer. So I did a Bible commentary on the book of Ezekiel. Just got put out on the market the end of December and beginning of January. This commentary on the book of Ezekiel, I did a real thorough analysis of Ezekiel 38 and 39, the Battle of Gog of the land of Magog. So now I'm going to bring it in, pulling it in, because we're in the end times. So is this end time battle, right? So right from my book that I wrote, I'm putting it in bolds here and explaining it as I did in the book. And I will turn back and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you forth and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. All right. So kind of similar to what Daniel was saying, isn't it? Huh? Can you see the resemblance? Like a whirlwind with chariots and horsemen with many ships, and ye shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Sounds like Gog of Magog. Well, the encounter that Gog is being turned back from is located within Daniel 11:40 through 43. As can be explained from Ezekiel 29 and 30, two chapters, very complex because there's two time frames being acknowledged within two chapters, weaved together. The conquests of Nebuchadnezzar through Egypt and the conquest of of the land of Magog in the end times. So weave between Ezekiel 29 and 30. The end times judgment against Egypt is weaved within 20. Here we go. Ezekiel 29, 8 through 16, Ezekiel 31 through 9, and Ezekiel 30, 12 through 19. Notice how there's three places in 29 through 30 that refer to the end time battle. Gog of the land of Magog is the king of the north within Daniel 11, 40 through 45. And I have researched and researched and researched. There's no other person that you can put in this place of anyone in any other Bible prophecy can be this person. All right, so look, we're going to read Isaiah 19, verse 4 first, because we're going to lay out the groundwork on the research that I've done to show you that the king of the north is Gog of the land of Magog. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, Antichrist, and a fierce king shall rule over them, says the Lord of hosts. So Isaiah 19:4. To keep this timeline of events consistently moving to the last judgment spoken of in Isaiah 19:1, the timing of Isaiah 19:4 coincides with the end times events. The fierce king who will rule over them will be Antichrist. The Lord gives the Egyptians over into his hand. That would seem to imply that there would be a conflict, which will cause them to resist being ruled over by Antichrist. He's ruling over them. He's giving over to the hand of the cruel Lord. They had to be um, defeated in a conflict. So let's find out what the conflict is. Daniel 11, verse 40. We're back to that verse again. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind and chariots and horsemen, and with many ships, and shall enter the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. Daniel 11:40 has been misinterpreted by most theologians. They seem to fail to use proper pronoun to noun references in order to determine who Daniel is referring to in this prophecy. If one refers to the pronoun him in the phrase, shall the king of the south push at him, who is him? We need to refer to the previous noun in verses 11:36 to 39. Since Daniel uses pronoun in verse 11:36 to 39 that refers to the first noun mentioned in verse 11:36, we must refer to the noun also. Verse 11:36 through 39 refer to the king, who has been determined by most theologians to be Antichrist. With this being understood, one can then plug Antichrist in place of the pronoun him in verse 11:40. Shall the king of the south push at Antichrist? Follow me? The next phrase that follows is where many will stumble upon. And the king of the north shall come against him. Using the same pronoun to noun referencing, one should understand that the king of the north shall come against the king of the south. All right? This him here is going back to the previous noun, which is king of the south. King. All right? And I'm going to explain that. Oh, no, 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 no. If we search back the entirety of Daniel 11, we'll find that Daniel only refers to the king of the south and king of the north initially. Then he uses pronouns to reference back to them. Never will we see Daniel referring to them at any time as just a king. He only calls the king of the south or king of the north. King of the north. Okay. And then with this understanding, Daniel did not call this king of the north as just the king, nor did he refer back to the pronoun used previously, as he did in the first phrase that referred back to verses 11:36 and 39. If Daniel meant for this king of the north to be Antichrist, he would have used the pronoun he or called him king. Only, and he shall come against him, or the king shall come against him. Instead, Daniel called him king in the north, which refers to a king from a northern empire. The king of the north historically has been the Armenian king from the Seleucid dynasties, as we covered already in this chapter. Because the time clock has fast forwarded to the times of the end, the location that the king of the north rules over is more difficult to determine. The Antichrist will send his king of the north to inflict war on the king of the south, which is Egypt. The noun pronoun referencing occurs within Daniel 11:41 through 42, which points to the king of the north, who was the last noun mentioned in verse 11:40. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. The king of the south, the land of the south, Egypt. Now, with Daniel 11:42 implying that Egypt shall not escape, that confirms that Isaiah says in Isaiah 19:4, when the Lord will give over into the hand of the Antichrist or cruel Lord. Ezekiel 30, verses 3 through 6, indicates that Egypt will fall by the sword during the same time of decimation, where they will eventually become desolate in verse 30, verse 7. The king of the north will do the police work for the Antichrist. The Antichrist is the fierce king who shall rule over them, per Isaiah 19:4. Okay, so now we'll look at Isaiah 19:5, and it says, "And the waters shall fail from the sea, and the river shall be wasted and dried up." Okay? In order for the waters to fail, they would have to stop being water or dried completely. This judgment should not be interpreted allegorically, like some will attempt to do. It is a literal interpretation to be applied. But with the decimation of the Nile River, spoken of within Ezekiel 29:9 through 11, prophecy, we can then envision the rerouting of the Nile River because of the totally new topography of the land. There is also a possibility that the Nile River will be dry, possibly not even ever exist within this decimating time of the earth. So we go into Isaiah 19:6, "And they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up. The reeds and flags shall wither." Now here it's saying it's rerouting, right? So we can make the presumption that it's going to be rerouted. It's just going to go, the topography is going to totally change, and the Nile is just going to go every which way. Um, in Isaiah 19:6, the pronoun they is one that refers back to Isaiah 19:4, with the battle between the Egyptians and the king of the north coming to pass. The decimation of the Nile River may be implied here to be those who attacked Egypt. The attackers turned the rivers away from flowing to the Mediterranean Sea by sending a nuclear strike onto the Aswan Dam. And we find that in Ezekiel 29:9 through 11. While the Nile River dries up, so will the entire delta of the mouth of the Nile River be dried up, which has always been a natural defense for the Egyptians. With no delta, the reeds and rushes, water plants, will be dried up, which are used in day-to-day life there. And I'll read you 19:7 of Isaiah. "The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown in the brooks shall wither and be driven away and be no more." It's been in existence since the flood of Noah, and now it's going to, or at this point, it's going to be gone. Since all the reeds and rushes need fertile and wet soil to grow, there will no more be available because the Nile River will be no more in that area. All right. So, if you're not sure about what I just told you about the Aswan Dam, I have an Ezekiel 29 prophecy in my commentary on Ezekiel 29. What it is there's going to be a nuclear strike on the Aswan Dam, as per Ezekiel 29:9 through 11, that's going to cause a nuclear flood between the Tower of Syene, the Lotus Tower of Syene, and Ethiopia, which is actually northern Sudan now. And so it will come to place with a nuclear strike, the Great Flood, and it will reroute. The, the topography of the whole land will change, and the river will be rerouted various which ways with nuclear water, by the way. So it's going to be devastation in the land. And if you want to say it would be a Seleucid king in the north, then it would be of Syria. Well, I'm sorry, Syria doesn't have nukes. There is a king that has nukes that kind of rules over Syria right now. When I say rules over, he is um, um, Putin. Vladimir Putin is the emperor of Russia, who actually controls the Syrian king, right? So he has nukes. Anyway, now that I've brought my readers to speed on what has been happening during the Ezekiel 38:4 declaration, I will now explain why I brought you here. But the tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore, he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. So, Daniel 11:44 is talking about this king who's going to be troubled by some news, right? Out of the east and out of the north of what? East and out of the north of where? Well, you can say east and out of the north of Africa, or you can say east and out of the north of Israel, who is the focus of the Bible. So out of the east and out of the north, he's going to hear something that's going to trouble him. So Gog, king of the north, will be heavily involved in punishing the militaries that want so badly to go into Israel so that they can destroy them. The king of the north, Gog, will be defending the 7-year peace covenant, Daniel 9:27, in behalf of the Antichrist. Daniel 11:36-39, when he will be turned back, and the Lord will put hooks into his jaws and will bring him forth, basically. We must look at the hook in the jaws of Gog, king of the north, as a call back to a military alliance, which he had been establishing with Persia, Iran, over the time that he has been in office. This military alliance will be demanding that Gog honor his alliance commitments and go forth against Israel in behalf of Persia, Iran. This hook will be so convincingly strong when he'll be forced to go forth against the newly established 7-year peace covenant by Antichrist with Israel. He will have, here we have the king of the north destroying Egypt and forces defending Egypt, which would be like Sudan and Libya and Lydia, um, because they will insist that they will be going forth against Israel because they had just defeated um, their Muslim brothers in the Psalm 83 uh, annihilation. But Gog will defend Antichrist peace covenant, right? Gog, king of the north, will then betray that same 7-year peace covenant that he had defended previously. That's going to trouble him. I got to now, after defending this, I'm going to be a hypocrite and go back and go against Israel and betray this 7-year peace treaty that I was defending. That is pretty troublous to someone, even if somebody evil as Vladimir Putin. Um, but tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. If you go northeast of Israel is what? Russia. Well, you can see Iran, you can see Iraq, and beyond that, you see Russia. All right, Georgia and all them. Um, Though conventional weaponry will be used, we must keep in mind that God was not going to describe the 21st century artillery here. When we read, and your army and horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. The reality of swords being carried cannot be ignored or considered a description of conventional weaponry. It has been an endeavor over the centuries that beheading the infidels is what Islamists find to be their most desired way of executing their victims. I have no doubt that these advancing militaries into the mountains of Israel will have their swords with them. Jihadists' beheading of their captives corresponds with aspects of cosmic war, particularly on how religious terrorists desires to please a deity and secure a place of honor in the hereafter has devalued the lives of both captor and prisoner. That's an explanation to you by Peter Lentini and Mohammed Bakshigamar of the jihadist beheadings. if you wonder where I got that. All right, now going into Ezekiel 38:5. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya, with them, all of them with shields and helmets. Now, while Persia is now modern day Iran, they have become the number one ally to Russia in the 21st century. A person should realize that during this time, which Ezekiel had written of the prophecy of Ezekiel 38 and 39, Ethiopia was a much larger territory. It had been divided in its southern territory and has been a non military country for centuries. However, the northern part of the land had become the country of Sudan, which is now an Islamic military state. It has been nearly a decade since the U.S. backed ousting of Libyan dictator Mohammed Gaddafi, and conditions in the country have gotten worse and more complicated. The UN backed government is the capital of Tripoli, has been loose control, very loose control over about a third of the country. To the east, Libya is controlled by a renegade general leading what they have been called the Libyan National Army, which has tried and failed to topple the government of Tripoli. Just to give you some update on current events in Tripoli or in Libya. So, Gog of Magog, king of the north, will bring one of the most powerful militaries to go against Egypt and the supporters from the other countries, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Gog of Magog. Where did I get this from? I got it from Daniel 11. Let's see. I have to find it for you because I think it's 11:31 or 11:40. Countries and pass over. So it's 11:40, right? All right. So in order to stamp out the rebellion and get to those in Egypt, he's going to stamp over them, right? Pass over the other countries to get to Egypt. So he's going through the Holy Land and everything. He will most likely be the one who will send the nuclear blast to the Aswan Dam, which may be encouraged by Antichrist, right? Hey, these people, these Egyptians want to go after Israel because of this battle that we've got now a peace treaty on, and they're saying, heck with your peace treaty, we're going after them. And Antichrist is going to tell Gog and Magog, hey, why don't you send a blast over to this dam, and that's going to pretty much stop them. And you go over there and annihilate them, and that's what Gog of Magog's going to do. He's going to go in first into Egypt and decimate it. All right, so let's read Daniel 11:41. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. All right, so the king of the north, Gog of Magog, will pass down through Israel. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and will destroy the attackers and overthrow the government regimes, except for those descendants of Edom, Moab, and Ammon, which are now located in Jordan and Gaza. So, and the leader, the king of Ammon, is designated here too. So, Daniel 11:42 and 43. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of the gold and the silver, and over the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. Still talking about the confrontation. You've got Libyans and Ethiopians, the Kuthians, the children of Cush, I'm sorry, the Cushians. Um, sorry about that. Are defending Egypt. These are all defending Egypt, and they're chasing Gog of Magog or his military. They're at his steps every direction he goes through there. The defeat of Egypt and the other rebellious countries will bring peace to the land surrounding Israel. Israel will feel secure for the first time since they had been brought back to the land in 1948. They will become a land of unwalled villages, which has never been the case. Russia will have defeated Egypt and taken booty of the riches, which still remain in Egypt. Notice in the end of Daniel 11:43, where a very significant statement is prophesied. The Libyans and Ethiopians will be the steps of Russia, Gog of Magog. If Libya and Sudan, who's Ethiopia, defend Africa from the invading Russians, they will be at the steps of Gog of Magog until they are defeated. Defeated militaries usually are forced to fight in behalf of their conquerors, or they die. That will be their choice to fight for Antichrist, king of the king of Daniel 11:36 through 39, or die. Any adversary of Gog of Magog, king of the north, will be defeated. So, after the disclosure within Ezekiel 30, verse 5, the military of Lydia will not march to the fight for Antichrist and Gog of Magog, but most likely will all fall by the sword, weapons at the hands of the strengthened Russian military. The militaries that will be defending their land in Africa, the men of the land that are in league, I get this from Isaiah, I'm sorry, I get this from Ezekiel 30, verse 5, I'm sorry, will fall except for the remaining militaries of Libya and Sudan, Ethiopia, who will march in behalf of the Russian military under Gog of Russia. So the defeated Libyans and Sudanians and Ethiopia will be at their steps, the Sudanians. Well, then they're defeated and then they are absorbed into the army. So you fight for me or you die. Okay, we'll fight for you because we don't want to die. That's the motivation of fighting for the Antichrist, because if you don't fight for him, you're going to die. 39:18, you shall eat the flesh of the mighty and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, the rams and lambs and goats and bullocks. This is Ezekiel 39:18. Okay. As Ezekiel's prophecy began in 39:17, he continued here in 39:18. His prophecy spoken by him over 2,600 years ago remains active in order for God's sovereign power to be seen when the fowls of the beasts come into the northern mountains of Israel to feast upon the many thousands of dead men. So, Ezekiel 39:17, you shall eat the flesh, well, the accumulating fowls and beasts are eating the flesh of the mighty and drinking the blood of the princes of the earth and rams and lambs and goats. It's going to be a sacrifice of God, because these people are coming against his people Israel. And so, well, let me explain it. When the fowls and beasts come into the northern mountains of Israel to feast upon the many thousands of dead men, Oleg Salyakov is the current commander of the Russian ground forces. This concept of princes being eaten holds true for all the ground forces coming into the mountains of northern Israel. They will be military commanders, which Ezekiel is calling princes. The Lord God used imagery here concerning his blood sacrifice of these evil armies attacking Israel. He used the same type of imagery for his future blood sacrifice in Basra when he will create the lake of fire on the last day of the 7 years. So here we got something happening on possibly the first or second or third day of the 7 years, and then he's going to have another blood sacrifice in Basra on the last day of the 7 years. God will feed his fowls and beasts only here in the beginning of the 7 years in Bashan, east of the Sea of Galilee, because on the last day of the 7 years of Armageddon, Valley of Jehoshaphat, all fowls of the entire earth will feast. No beasts. Isaiah 34, verse 6, talking about the attack on Basra. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood and is made fat with fatness. This is God's blood sacrifice. And the blood of the lambs and goats and the fat and the kidneys of rams for the Lord is a sacrifice in Basra in a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. Right? Please do not combine Isaiah 34:6 with Ezekiel 39:18 prophecy. They are only related because they both are the blood sacrifices at God's altar. This blood sacrifice of rams and lambs and goats and bullocks of all the fatlings of Bashan will occur in the first weeks of the 7 years. Meanwhile, the Isaiah 34:6 blood sacrifice will occur on the final day of the 7 years. All right? You can find that in Ezekiel 35:6. The commonality will be that God will destroy the heathen who will come to destroy Israel in this Gog of Magog blood sacrifice, as well as the Basra blood sacrifice to create the lake of fire on day 2520 of the 7 years. So a lot of this you guys haven't learned or been taught because your pastors are ignorant. Sorry about that, but hey, that's why I'm here. Got many videos teaching on this. You can go online and find my Isaiah 34 video. I think I posted a video on Isaiah 34. I do have videos on the Gog of Magog videos, so you can watch that. So, and then I've got my books if you want. You can go online and buy a book. The Ezekiel book is a hardback binder. The Isaiah book is a hardback binder. So you're buying some big hardback binders there. Let's see. Revelation 19, 17, and 18. I did a commentary on Revelation also. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried out with a loud voice, saying, all to the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. Don't see any beasts here. That you may eat the flesh of kings, and flesh of captains, and flesh of mighty men, and flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, that flesh of men, both free and bond, small and great. So, those of you that think that Armageddon is the battle of Gog and Magog, you're wrong. Okay? There are no beasts feasting on Armageddon, only fowls. The Armageddon feast will occur on day 2520 on of the last day of the 7 years, and only include all fowls with no beasts of the field. They will feast on kings also, while the Ezekiel 38-39 feast will only devour one king, Gog of Russia. The Basra blood sacrifice will occur separately from Armageddon on the same day, moments before. The Lord also provided Ezekiel the location of this blood sacrifice in the mountains of Israel. I had in the past thought that this was in the mountains of Israel surrounding Jerusalem. The location of Bashan is east of the Sea of Galilee in those northern mountains of Israel. Interestingly, God has planned for them to accumulate in the northern parts outside of Israel. And you shall come forth out of your place out of the north, right? North parts, right? That's in Ezekiel 38:15. Daniel 11:45 has indicated that the king of the north, who is the king of Russia, is to build his tents and his fortress between the seas of the glorious holy mountains of Israel. Looking to the map of the Holy Land, page 517, we can see that the two seas between the glorious holy mountains of Israel are the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Most militaries will build a command center before carrying out the military advancements. When the Daniel prophecy comes to pass, could we see the king of Russia establish these tents before the attack? The king of the north, Russia, may not proceed into Northeast Africa through these verses here. He may not be the one that goes there. But when his military returns back to the location of Bashan, he may establish himself in these holy mountains near Bashan. This is where Gog dies. Gog is killed. Gog of Magog is killed in the mountains near Bashan. This would be on the east side of the Jordan River Valley in modern day Golan Heights, east of the Sea of Galilee. Here's Bashan right here. See it? And here's the Sea of Galilee. Here's the Dead Sea. So here is where Gog of Magog is going to be, between the two seas in the mountains of Bashan, right? Right there. So I'm going to read Daniel 11:45, and he shall plant the tents of his fortresses between the seas and the glorious holy mountains, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. All right. So I'm just going to finish this off. The king of Russia, Gog of Magog, may find his end in a command center established in the Golan Heights, when the Lord God will rain his great hailstones of fire and brimstone down upon him. Ezekiel 38:22. And there's your end of Daniel chapter 11, from beginning to end, verse 1 through the 45. Many will disagree, many will argue, but they have no biblical support, because I have just rebuked all the biblical support and provided you with many, many verses that confirm what I've already confirmed. I have many, many studies on this, and hit like down below, subscribe to my channel for future videos. Daniel 12 is next. It should be a good one too. Until then, may God bless, and I'll see you again soon.